I don't know how one could be more anti-Christ than sharing with you a prophecy that was claimed to justify the creation of a Jesus Christ, when it in fact shows that there was no such individual. And that the one making the prophecy that is now available for us in Daniel 9, 26 and 27, or 25 and 26, I suppose it is, was none other than Gabry'el. And contrary to what is claimed foolishly in the Christian New Testament, Gabry'el is not an angel. The text, even in Daniel, says that he's a man. And Gabry'el means strong and courageous, capable man of God. A Gabor is a man. Read your Hebrew. It's not complicated. So the Christian New Testament lied when it said that Gabriel informed Mary that she was going to have a baby boy. No, that did not happen. And the boy that was born to us, the son who was given to us, is Dowd. Read Isaiah 9 in context. It even says it's Dowd. And Miriam just so happens to be the nastiest name in all of Hebrew. It means contentious and rebellious. She was the one who, as Moshe's sister, was struck by leprosy because she did exactly what the authors of the Christian New Testament did. Claimed that they spoke for God when they were not authorized to do so. And as Gabry'el, there is only one man that Yahweh associates repetitively the concept of Gabor. And that is his beloved son, our king, the actual Messiah, Dowd. And so with this realization that is undeniable, we have the Messiah speaking about his arrival as the Messiah, and the Messiah is Dowd, negating any possibility of there being a Jesus Christ. How's that for anti-Christ? And then on top of all of that, Dowd validated the realization that what he was saying was prophetic, because he provided the exact date in 555 BCE when he was visiting with Daniel to record this prophecy, when he would return in his second of three lives to fulfill Chag Matsah, providing that date is April 9th, 33 CE, which is the concluding date of Chag Matsah. And that alone, it not only validates the prophecy, but even more than that. It tells you that he was there to fulfill Chag Matsah, something that Christians don't even acknowledge. They had their mythical God-man taking a nap in the tomb on the Saturday when the Shabat was devoted to the most difficult work of all, carrying our guilt and depositing it in Sheol, which is something that David not only did, but told us about. How's that for Antichrist? Well, that's not the end of the prophecy, because there is more, and we're going to continue with the narrative that Gabry'el, who's Dowd, provided through Daniel for our benefit 2,600 years ago. And when we do, we find ourselves jumping ahead now in time, well, to the destruction of Dowd city and then Yahweh's temple. But to appreciate this in context, this is what we last considered. Therefore, know, being aware of Yada, recognizing so as to gain the insights to think about and understand that from the going forth of the word to return and restore, rebuilding Yeruwshalem until the restoring testimony and eternal witness of the Son of the Sovereign, who is conspicuously making this known and who is providing the leadership and counsel of the Messiah, the anointed Messiah, the Mashyach. There are 7 sevens and thus 7 promises and fulfilled vows. Therefore, in 62 weeks, she shall be restored and rebuilt to reestablish and fortify the way to grow and expand by being diligent and decisive in a troubled time of oppression. Then after the 62 weeks, the anointed Messiah, Mashyach, will be cut off and separated to create the covenant, being banished, but not for himself. That was Daniel 9:25 and 26, at least in part. Therefore, as we have deduced, this was addressing the Mashyach, Dowd, fulfillment of Chag Matsah between April 2nd and April 9th in 33 CE, which just so happened to be the 80th Yobel year of 4,000 Yah. But then, recognizing his people would reject what he would achieve and even replace him, in one breath to the next, we find ourselves dealing with the consequence in 70 CE with the beast of Rome, destroying the city and Yahweh's temple. Then, the city, Ha'ir, the largest population center of the set-apart people, and the sanctuary, those who are separated and distinct, uncommon and devoted, and therefore not religious, in the most set-apart place, and therefore in Yeruwshalem, will be corrupted. They're going to be ravaged. They'll be destroyed. They're going to be ruined and rendered useless, annihilated, and razed. Hiful imperfect, third person, masculine, singular. As a matter of history, we know that the Ebonim were the ones who both recognized Dowd and documented what he said at this time, providing us with the Sermon on the Mount and the Olivet Discourse, although they're wrongly attributed to the mythical Jesus when they were both spoken by Dowd. Unfortunately, for telling us the truth, they were hunted down and killed by the rabbis who were haunted by their message and by the emerging devotees also of Paul. And with the inhabitants of Yeruwshalem rejecting the city's founder and favorite son, God's son, Dowd, Yahweh would abandon them, leaving them to be mauled by the beast of Rome and then the Roman Catholic Church. There was no longer any connection to the temple, the city, or the people. They were now irritating and counterproductive, and so the people were ravaged and the temple was destroyed exactly as Gabry'el, Dowd, had foretold. Fortunately, this deplorable state of affairs will change, even though to witness this transformation, we must leap ahead 40 Yobel rather than just 40 years. And Dowd was aware that his father would empower the aforementioned Yada, known here as Miqra'ey, the one who is right about God, to make a difference. People of the extended family, of the one who will come and then return, is the son of the sovereign and prince of the king, who is conspicuously making this known and who is providing the leadership and counsel. Neged, of the one who has officially attained the status of being properly appointed and who has expounded upon, announced, and proclaimed this message. And he, in the end, at the far limits of time, he will be hacked to death. He's going to be cut into pieces. He will complete his purpose by being chopped up. It is from Katzatz, hewn into pieces in an overwhelming manner, and along with a torrent of water to purge and to wash away, Shetef, during this intense outpouring that will be inundating, scouring, rinsing, while also engulfing and sweeping away from shut off to rinse and wash, as the restoring witness delivering the eternal testimony at the conclusion of this period by being cut down and hacked to pieces, cuts. These battle lines have been drawn, the war is determined, and the fight is decreed. This crushing conflict and struggle against the adversary is decided upon, and it is assured, such that it is devastating and desolating. It's appalling and horrifying. This is the conclusion of my means to decide, Daniel 9:26, and I can assure you that you've never heard it presented this way previously. It is always assumed that the first Neged is the Messiah when it cannot be, because of the fact that he's not a prince. And he's king. And the second one is thought to be the Antichrist fellow that is in opposition to the Messiah, but that would be awkward since it's used, therefore, to speak of two different people, one sentence to the next, inside of the same verse. Pretty awkward, huh? And it doesn't allow us to render the rest of the words as they are actually defined. Now, to get to the position where you can translate this accurately and convey it through its correct intent requires a level of study that is beyond what anyone else has attempted. To do this, to be completely focused on the Torah Wanabi for 24 years, 7 days a week, 10, 12, 14 hours a day. Looking at the oldest extant manuscripts, stripping every word of its diacritical markings so that the truth could be known. And even then, with the aid of the seven spirits of Yahowah, to deduce what I have just shared with you. Now, I understand that this rendering is completely different than what religious publications have promoted, but what they have projected just isn't rational. They would have you believe that the Neged, son of the sovereign and prince of the king, who is conspicuously making this known as Yada, is the Mashyach in one breath, but then represents the Antichrist in the next. That simply isn't reasonable. And you know it. You just don't want to deal with it if you're religious. Therefore, after telling his people that he would be cut off from the living to enable the covenant in 33 CE, Dowd is revealing that the consequence of his people rejecting what he would accomplish and counterfeiting him would be that within 40 years, they would be cut down and the temple torn down. This prognostication was nearly as profound as acknowledging and then dating the fulfillment of Chag Matsah, because it was done 600 years in advance. It was then, after discussing the events of the first century CE, that Dowd took us 40 Yobel ahead in time. To win the people of the Neged, the son of the sovereign, who would be greeted by the Neged, prince of the king, with Neged serving to identify Gabry'el, Dowd, and Miqra'ey, Yada. We are both prolific and Neged, making all of this known through our counsel by expounding on this announcement. In fact, you'll see both of us throughout this prophetic revelation. While both will arrive and return, cats in the end, it is only Ad, the restoring witness, who will be cats, who will be hacked to death at this time. Yada will serve as the Adama Parah, the bloody red man of the earth, this productive bull, by fulfilling Yom Teruah, the day of the herald. So cats was used twice to convey that the sacrifice at the conclusion of the time of trouble will be devastating. He will be cut up, while Dowd, by comparison, was simply cut off. I should not say simply. He went into Sheol, hell, to rid us of our guilt. But it's Yada who is cut up. It's Dowd who is cut off. Therefore, while Gabriel's soul would endure and enter Satan's eternal habitat, 2,000 years thereafter, the corporeal manifestation of Hasatan, the adversary, will slice the Bashar body of Dowd's Neged to pieces prior to Hasatan being sent to Sheol forevermore. The parallel between these things. For Dowd to be separated in the layer of Satan, Sheol, and for his Bashar, this Adama Parah, to be hacked to death by Satan prior to him being dispatched to Sheol is poetic in a way, isn't it? I came into this presentation having completed my translation and commentary on the 34th Mizmor. You'd say, so what? Well, the 34th Mizmor concludes by speaking of the death of the shepherd and calling it brutal. And it presents the sacrifice that are made both by Dowd, as he fulfilled Pesach and Matzah, and of Yada, his Bashar herald, as he fulfills Teruah, the day of the herald, as being gruesome. But when addressing what will be, what I, as the Adama Parah, will endure, there is the misconception that the negation was on bones or on one, to suggest that not one of his bones will be broken. But that's not how the text that Dowd write actually reads. It says, of his bones, only one will not be broken. And that is to say that while Dowd endured the enormous pressure, crushing nature of Sheol, which is a black hole, his herald will be crushed almost in supernatural fashion by Satan. Only one bone will be intact. That's very similar to what we just read here, isn't it? Over and over again, with God describing the gruesomeness of this same. And if you're squeamish, going back to those who would prefer those with God to be humble and meek, then this is tough for you to swallow, but I want you to think it through. Dowd describes the treatment he received at the hands of the beast of Rome in the 22nd Mizmor. And he describes being whipped to death by the Roman metal-tipped whips, such that his body no longer looks human. His flesh, sinew is just ripped off. He's like a bloody grub. And then he would endure the most excruciating form of torture that anyone has ever devised: crucifixion. And that was the easy part, because his soul went on to carry our guilt into Sheol, to deposit it there, which really pisses me off. And God, not that Dowd did it, but that the vast majority of people, including Jews, have negated it. And they created a goddamn myth in this Jesus Christ and credited him with doing the very things that Dowd had done for us after enduring that level of torment and torture. To credit a counterfeit? If you're a Christian, you should be ashamed of yourselves to have done that to God, to have done that to his beloved Son. It is repulsive. You're even so disgusting that you turned your God into a man. And even worse than that, you claim that men can kill your God. And as if you can't think, you have the solution being bodily resurrection, not knowing that the body is worthless. And every aspect of your religion is nothing but a complete and utter fraud, and it's a fraud over this. But I digress. What Dowd endured was horrific. And Yada, as the restoring witness, as this Neged, must endure something that is similar. And it will be gruesome. Why? To get your attention. So that you know that the guilt that was removed from you, your religious stench, the stain of your religiosity, comes at a great cost. And that an enormous penalty was paid to remove it from you. You need to know the price that was paid and that will be paid. And this is all very personal, because Dowd is my king, and I'm the one who endures that final torment. You want to mock it? Do so vocally, and you will end up where Hasatan himself is going. You don't want to capitalize upon it? That is your choice. One less stripe I have to endure. But go away quietly. It's going to be gruesome, because it has to garner the remnant's attention. It is the Adamah Parah. This is the remedy for the adulterous woman. This is the purpose of the Torah's narrative about the bull, and the role that a man cast as a bull will play in the last days. There are thousands of prophecies pertaining to this. It's amazing that people have missed it, but they missed this one too, didn't they? Well, for everyone, actually, this is good news, even for the one that endures it, because he is somebody who is, by necessity, has to have camaraderie with the king. And when you realize that the king has earned our respect by enduring crucifixion on Pesach and going into hell on Matzah, it takes a lot to stand in his company. And that is precisely what this Bashar herald must do. And he must also earn the people's respect, because under Dowd, he will guide them. He is Dowd's official. He is the lesser luminary to the greater luminary, just as the moon reflects the sun's light. So it is good news. It is germane to Dowd's story as our Savior in 33 CE, transpiring as it will again in 2033, when his herald will endure this. It is the result of stetef, an overpowering torrent of water that will be released beneath the sacrifice of the parah, the bull, who has served as the ad restoring witness. That mortal remnant of Yisrael will be stefesh, purged of their religious guilt. I am very far behind in this program now, sharing with you what I have learned in my translations over the last month. And I bring you this to your attention because I was attacked by members of the Mother Goddess cult based upon two things. One is this myth that God wants people to be timid and humble in his presence as opposed to bold, which is his preference. And that the Torah should be disregarded when it says in the 12th chapter of Deba'im that you can eat whatever you want. And so I went back to that passage, turned out to be a prophecy, spoke out against the mother goddesses, which I've shared with you previously. But it goes on much further than that, as it talks about the collaboration between the ram and the bull on this day and what we will accomplish together. But in specifics, by having this body of the bull, he's a man in the guise of a bull in the sense of the bull is symbolic, the man is real. Being lacerated in this way, what you can be assured of is there'll be copious amounts of blood. And what you find is that Deba'im, Deuteronomy 12, and its depiction of you being liberated to eat whatever you want, focuses far more on blood. And why we should not drink it because of the symbol that it represents when it is soaked into the very earth of the Temple Mount and on the altar that God will have provided for this sacrifice. And then the copious amounts of water are released to bring that mixture of ash when the body is cremated by God's doing. And the waters are released off the Temple Mount, and the blood and the ash are mixed together to purge the religious corruption of the adulterous woman, so that she is prepared to meet Dowd upon his return. That what we find in Deba'im, Deuteronomy 12, is the story of that blood. And then in the 34th Mizmor, we find the story of him being mauled and crushed. And of course, this all makes it possible for the blood of the bull to be available for Dowd to anoint the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant on Kippurym 10 days later. But this is how that final remnant of Yisrael is purged of the religious guilt, and it comes at a gruesome price. The guilt will be washed away, and as a result, the adulterous woman that has been the religious whore of Israel will be prepared for her betrothal to her returning king. The Neged at this time will be the best man, standing beside the Mashyach Dowd. Well, now that Gabry'el has explained the who, the where, the when, the why, and all of the insights has been provided regarding the fulfillment of Chag Matsah in 33 CE to deliver the benefits of the covenant, and has explained the means that the restoring witness will use to facilitate the return of his people in purging the final remnant of their religiosity prior to Dowd's arrival. And this being the conclusion of the time of troubles, Dowd directs our attention to the commencement of these events on or before Shabu'wah of 2027, The Torahless one will do to Israel what he will do to the Adamah Parah, dissecting the nation to make it indefensible. I actually think that this will occur on or before the Shabu'wah in 2026, which would be May 22nd. And that on the Shabu'wah in 2027, which is June 11th, we will experience the harvest. And therefore, he, as an exceedingly influential person, will vault himself into prominence by arrogantly confirming and opposing Gabor. He will strengthen and empower, then triumph by imposing a self-aggrandizing and overbearing treaty, a covenant, an agreement, an arrangement, a Beryth, an international contractual compact and binding pledge with a great many, including plenty of rabbis, Rabim, the preponderance of people, especially the elitists, for 1 week, based upon a single promise during a particular Shabu'wah. Daniel 9:27 in part. Satan's advocate, whom we know as the copper confabulator, demonic Donald, is the great betrayer of Israel. He is today's Neville Chamberlain and will be sacrificing Israel to appease the Muslims who have bribed him and repay MBS of Saudi Arabia and Al Thani of Qatar. This will occur on or before Shabu'wah in 2026 for there to be a full week of years prior to the resolution in advance of Shabu'wah on the 11th of June 2027. So we're speaking of the Shabu'wah on the 22nd of May 2026. It is the Shabu'wah on the 11th of June in 2027 that coincides with the 2,300-day period that corresponds with the time of Israel's troubles, the worst of them. This is an interesting conundrum that I want to mention, but not to resolve, because I think these options were intended. We should be prepared for the dismemberment of Israel as soon as Shabu'wah in 2026, May 22nd, and no later than Shabu'wah in 2027 on the 11th of June. We should work such that if the Shabu'wah harvest, the Katsir, occurs on May 22nd next year, we will have done all we could to make it as productive as possible, while also prepared to capitalize on the extension of time if it is afforded to us, which I think it will be. If the harvest occurs on the 22nd of May, 2026, Israel will have already been dissected, and the 2,300-day warning will apply to the carnage of Al-Aqsa Flood 2.0, beginning in June on the following Shabu'wah. This way, it's a full 7 years of grief during the time of trouble and 2,300 days of Holocaust conditions. And under these situations, the Katsir for the covenant family could transpire on either date, but I'd rather continue to address the possibilities accompanying the earlier time frame while setting expectations on the Shabat of 11 June 2027, because no one is disappointed if we are taken home earlier than expected, but many would lose their confidence if shaken. If it did not happen and they did not reach this potential as of May 22nd, 2026. So this prognostication regarding the divestiture of Israel for an Islamic state was originally presented in Yashayah, Isaiah, in the 17th chapter. Isaiah was revealed right around 725 BCE, and this discussion between Gabry'el, Dowd, and Daniel was in 555 BCE. So you can see one preceded the other. In Isaiah, the timing of the divestiture of Israel and the land was coterminous with Shabu'wah. And then in the 18th chapter, we're afforded over 70 indications that the nation and individual responsible for the betrayal of Israel will be America and Donald Trump. The characteristics collectively were far more than sufficient to demonstrate that the perpetrator imposing the treaty that initiates Israel's great suffering is no other than the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, which explains why he is acting so devilishly. That's why he has such a difficult time with his perverted sexuality, why he is so dishonest, why he's so mean-spirited. Well, he is a confabulator. He's demon-possessed. And it's obvious. And the prophets forewarned us about this. Well, we have discovered here in Daniel that this warmongering egomaniac in pursuit of his Nobel Peace Prize will have 10 political cohorts championing Israel's demise. We have always known that when it comes down to a vote in the United Nations, fewer than 10 of nearly 200 nations will support Israel. When given the opportunity to stand with Israel against the onslaught of Islamic terror and Marxist propaganda, 90% are going to make the wrong call. In my mind, the only remaining question is whether Israel has been so weakened by its counterproductive prosecution of the war in Gaza and subsequent world condemnation that it will be forced into retreating to her 1967 borders, or whether the world has just capitulated to the threat of Muslims and the bribes of Muslims, and that some other arrangement will be worked out. But we are told without question that the majority of the world is going to support what's being done to Israel, and that Israel will become indefensible because she is narrowed at the waist. And if you look at the area between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, that's where 70% of Jews live, and it's a very narrow place. And as we know, Muslims have schemed to destroy Israel since Islam was invented. With Israel defenseless and vulnerable, free Palestine will rapidly evolve to a final and horrifying battle to annihilate the Jewish people. This is Satan's last-ditch effort to forestall Dowd's homecoming on Yom Kippurym by obliterating Israel. Ezekiel's 25 ways to kill Jews will be in full effect. And with no one to turn to for support, the carnage will be catastrophic. Worse than the Holocaust. If not for Yada's and Eliah's support and Yahweh's intervention before Dowd's return, quite frankly, all would be lost, and God says as much. Now, since the monster behind this madness is a demon-possessed Trump, I checked to learn the Scottish, Gaelic, Celtic origins of his name. Donald is from Domnall, which is a compound of two Celtic terms, Dubno, D-U-B-N-O, meaning world, and Wallow, which is supreme ruler, such that Donald conveys supreme ruler of the world. As the Antichrist's last name, Trump, is a verb meaning to surpass by defeating. But as a Germanic noun in recognition of his father's nationality, a trump is a trumpet. Now, this may somehow infer that the target of Satan's rage will be associated with Towrah, which is the day that Dowd's herald, the ultimate manifestation of Teruah, will be mauled by Satan. This is when the showdown occurs. This is the day that Satan has been shooting for now for 6,000 years. So now that Gabry'el has shared insights regarding the beginning and end of the final week of years leading to his return, he splits the difference and reminds us that something else will occur halfway between these events. He tells us, but halfway through, from Shabu'wah, he will forestall the benefits of the sacrifice which had been freely offered as a gift. The most extreme aspect of this vile and abhorrent action of repulsive religious idolatry will devastate, desolate, and incapacitate. But in the end, the restoring witness will finish, determined to fulfill and accomplish the mission, even to the point of complete annihilation. This has been determined and decreed, spoken about and pronounced, even to the point of mutilation. This maiming by bludgeoning has been decided upon and is the result of exercising good judgment, to be poured out as a form of payment, brought forth in liquid fashion on those who were deserted and devastated and who have been ravaged. Daniel 9:27, this is the conclusion of it. Well, this is an interesting confluence of events for sure. By collocating Passover with Easter and Ashura Day for Christian and Islamic consumption, then disassociating the intent from Matzah when Dowd's soul was cut off from the living to carry our guilt into Sheol, the devil's advocate will have negated the value of Pesach. Therefore, to resolve this abhorrent crime which incapacitates God's people, we are told that the restoring witness will fulfill his calling, such that as the Adam of Parah, he will let the adversary annihilate him. Now, long ago, this is what Gabry'el and Miqra'ey determined in consultation with YAHOWAH. It is what is decreed and spoken about throughout the prophets. By mutual consent, the decision has been made for the Neged, the king's prince, to allow Satan to mutilate his soon-to-be discarded body by bludgeoning him to death on Teruah. And in this way, God will pour out the means to rejuvenate the mortal remnant who have been devastated by the horrors endured during the time of trouble. Formerly known as the adulterous woman, the religious whore of Israel will be cleansed for the family reunion and the upcoming wedding. All Dowd sought to achieve will be known and appreciated. And on that happy note, of course, we conclude the 9th chapter of Daniel. It will have been Satan's last hurrah. Religion will be no more, relegated to Sheol with its author and its inspiration, along with Trump himself. As we have discovered when reviewing the adversary's playbook and Ezekiel, for Satan to have prevailed in this quest to rise above Dowd and Yisrael, he must negate what our Messiah and King have achieved, because they forestall his return. Fortunately, Satan's influence with Paul, Luke, Mark, and Peter in the creation of the New Testament, leading to the abusive nature of imperial Rome and Roman Catholicism, Rabbi Akiba, and the institutionalizing of rabbinic Judaism to lead Jews away from Yah, and then Muhammad, through whom the devil became Allah and ushered in unmitigated anti-Semitism through Allahu Akbar, will finally have lost its sting. However, he will have come exceedingly close to prevailing. But in the end, there will be Jews to reconcile. And that is why this story has a happy ending. Thank you for listening.